Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. Welcome to another patch preview. This one doesn't really have a name, it's just 3.02 patch preview. They're not introducing a new feature in this patch, they're not introducing a new champion, so I guess I will just go with 3.02 for this patch. We do have a new champion coming, but I think it's not for another week or two. So in the meantime, let's just go ahead and look at what changes actually took place. This is a smaller patch than some of the others. Hopefully I can get through it a little bit faster. I said I would have a short video last time and it ended up being 45 minutes. So we will see what happens. Let's go through. First up, Akali. They have the explanation of the change here. The changes are designed to open up additional rune and mastery setups for Akali. What they want to do is they want to make it so that you don't need these very specific rune pages to operate Akali. In the past, her passive is twin disciplines, and you needed to have X amount of ability power and X amount of attack damage to get her passives to work. So you had to run these sort of very specific rune setups that had to be pretty much custom set up for Akali in order to get her passives operating at the start of the game. What they've done is they've made the passives take effect immediately instead of requiring X amount of ability power and X amount of attack damage, but they've reduced the scaling as a result. So they've reduced the base damage bonus from 8% to 6% and the base spell vamp from 8% to 6%. So now, I'm not an Akali player. The way I interpret this is for your typical average person who plays League of Legends, this is a positive change. That means you don't have to have sort of this very customized rune setup to play Akali to her maximum effectiveness. But for someone who is an Akali mainline player, the fact that the scaling's gone down probably means that this is a little bit of a nerf. I mean, it depends on how much AP and how much AD you actually had. And I do not play Akali myself, so I don't know the exact numbers here. But it feels like because the scaling has been nerfed, it feels like that's a little bit of a nerf. After all, I mean, if you took the time to customize your runes, it wasn't that hard to get 20 starting AP, and it wasn't that hard to get 10 starting AD. So, anyway, not an Akali player like I said, but I feel like for expert players, this is a slight nerf. Overall, though, it's a good change. It's a good change. Akali's setup required too much specialization. Okay, that was one of the bigger changes in this patch. Other stuff, Anivia, they changed it so if you chat while in egg form, instead of saying it comes from Anivia, now the message comes from Egg Nivea, EGG, Egg Nivea. So somebody was just having fun in the Riot office when they did that. No real effect there. New upgrade to Janna's auto attack. I'm going to have to try this out. I have not played her since the patch went through like 2 days ago. So we will see. Nice to see that she's getting a more responsive auto attack. Bug fix with Jarvan, dealing more damage than intended to minions and monsters. Bug fix, I don't know what the story was there. Very, very minor nerfs to Lulu. Nothing too significant here. When cast after health picks, Lulu's Q, her glitter lance, no longer gains increased area of effect size against the target. So this is relatively minor. Again, this is pretty much a bug fix. It makes it a little bit more difficult to hit her Q slow after you cast help picks on the target. One of the basic Lulu combos is you hit E, you cast E on somebody, and then that allows you to hit them with your Q. So this makes it a little bit more difficult to do that, but I mean this is pretty minor. And Whimsy, that's her polymorph, that's her E skill, no longer interrupts enemy movement abilities that are in progress. So if somebody is in the middle of some kind of movement ability and you polymorph them, it doesn't interrupt it. Like I said, these are pretty minor issues. I mean, I suppose they're nerfs, but they're quite minor. I don't see this really changing how anyone views Lulu in any way. Fixed a bug with Alpha Strike to appear available when it was on cooldown. Okay, that's nice. Fixed a bug with Morgana's Soul Shackles, causing the sound effect to play when the target wasn't stunned. You know, I actually have seen this bug in action. I have seen the sound effect play when someone wasn't actually stunned. So anyway, that's nice. Nami, very modest improvements to Nami. She's been getting very slight buffs. I don't think that these have been major enough to cause people to start playing her. I haven't seen much Nami play. I think they still need to do a little bit more to get people to play her. They've made her auto attack a little bit cleaner, it looks like. Maybe they increased the projectile speed or just made the animation smoother. They also bumped up her base movement speed. They already increased it from 330 to 335. Now they've increased it again to 340. That actually does affect things, particularly for someone like Nami. Her passive allows her to speed herself or allies up. So giving her a higher base movement speed actually does make it easier for her to chase someone down and catch them in her bubble, her Q. So that, I mean, this does matter, but ultimately it's probably not enough to see a lot of Nami play unless either number one, she gets further buffs, or number two, other supports with a similar role get nerfed. So we're going to need one of the two. As of right now, she's still a very niche pick. She's actually not that bad. Honestly, I've played her a little bit. She's not bad, but she has a very high skill cap, and you have to be very good at hitting her Qs, which is not an easy skill shot to land. So she is a bit difficult to use. Alrighty, other stuff. This is one of the other biggest changes. I almost think of this as the Nasus patch. Big buffs to Nasus. Very big. I am looking forward to playing around with this because I'm someone who actually has played a lot of Nasus, and I enjoy his gameplay a lot. Okay, they first of all they fixed a bug. If you've been watching League of Legends Reddit, you may have seen some videos about this. They fixed the bug where his Siphon Strike critical strikes were dealing more damage than intended. There was a bug. Nasus's Q is not supposed to be able to critical strike. Actually, that's not entirely true. You can get a crit on his Q, but the bonus damage is not supposed to crit. Only the base damage is supposed to crit. Anyway, that was bugged in the last patch, and people were able to get a critical strike on all of the damage from his siphoning strike, and people were pulling off like 2,000 or 3,000 damage critical strikes. It was hilarious, but that was not intended. So they fixed that back to the way it should be. Still, this is a huge buff to Nasus. So this is his bread and butter skill, his siphoning strike, his Q. This is what he farms up over the game and he gets more damage. Instead of scaling mana cost on his Qs, they've reduced it from 20 mana up to 40 to a flat 20 at all ranks. And again, this is a humongous buff to Nasus. One of his biggest problems is he tends to run out of mana in the laning phase. So much so that I've traditionally had to buy a Philosopher's Stone when playing Nasus in top lane, just because otherwise he runs out of mana and he can't keep charging up his Q. Now he'll be able to avoid that. He will not have those mana problems. You max his Q first, so you get up to that 40 mana cost very quickly. Now at half that mana cost, he'll be able to last hit with his Siphon Strike, and he won't run out of mana, which means he won't have to itemize for mana, or he won't have to itemize for mana regen, and he can go straight into an item like either Glacial Shroud, or he can go into I've seen that other things like Spirit Massage are very good on him. Locket of the Iron Solari is pretty good on Nasus too. So something involving cooldown reduction, he can just rush that immediately, and it makes him much better. So this is a big buff to Nasus. I'm going to be breaking out the dog, and getting in some more play with Nasus because he is going to be viable for the first time in honestly years. He's been a weak option for a very very long time, but this makes him viable, I think, in top lane. Then another buff, pretty nice stuff in terms, this is his ultimate, his R, Fury of the Sands. When he has his ultimate up, it increases his attack range while active. And cast range. Does this mean the cast range? Oh, I believe this is the cast range of his skills. I believe that increases the cast range of his Wither and of his Spirit Fire. So that's a big deal. He gets more auto attack range, and I believe he can Wither people an extra 100 range. So that's a big deal. And then they also cut the mana cost by a third, down from 150 to 100. And this is funny because I just did a Nasus game this week in preparation for these buffs coming through. We knew they were coming. And I was in a situation where I actually died, where I would have survived if I could have ulted, but I didn't have enough mana. I only had like 100 mana, and I did not have enough to ult. So that dropping those mana costs really does matter. I mean, you just don't have to worry about running out of mana to nearly the same extent. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this does to Nasus, and I'm looking forward to getting to play him some with these changes because they're big, big buffs. Make a big increase. Okay, Nocturne bug fixes. Wouldn't automatically chase his target after using ult. I have not seen this before, but I'll take their word for it. Renekton fixed a bug on his Slice and Dice. It wouldn't work on minions he couldn't see. Okay, take your word for it again. Renekton, by the way, has been getting played a lot in the League Championship Series. He's been very popular both in Europe and North America, so we may see some nerfs coming in the future, but he's been very popular right now. Team Solo Mid's been playing him a lot. Gambit Gaming, former Moscow 5, also been playing him a lot, but they've always played him a lot, even when he wasn't considered that strong. Riven, they are adjusting some things with Riven. Now, unfortunately, I'm not enough of a Riven player to give you too much feedback on this. They've adjusted the damage on her Runic Blade from 5 to 15 plus 0.15 bonus attack damage to simply 15 to 45% of her total attack damage, and it scales on champion level. So what they're saying is they want to give her more itemization choices beyond simply stacking AD. Does this do that? I really don't know. They also want to reduce her early lane snowballing, but give her a chance to recover. So what this means is she has more scaling. I believe that's the idea, that she gets more scaling, but because she doesn't have that flat 5 to 15, she'll be weaker early on. I think that's how I interpret this. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure. I don't like that they have the zero point 0.5 bonus attack damage here. Oh, I see what it is. Okay. All right, I see what it is. So it was 5 to 15 initially, and then 0.05 bonus attack damage. Now it's adjusted to a percentage of total attack damage. Not bonus attack damage, total attack damage. Okay, so I see what that's saying. Unfortunately, I can't sort of figure out whether this is good or bad off the top of my head because the math starts getting more complicated. But the idea is Riven is less wedded to bonus attack damage. That's attack damage that comes from items, not levels. So she's less wedded to stacking bloodthirsters and things like that. Okay, this, if they've done their math correctly, and Riot doesn't always do their math correctly, but if they've done it correctly, this is a good change because Riven was always sort of very tightly tied to getting as much bonus attack damage as possible in terms of how her kit worked. And that's why you'd see her get a Bloodthirster because it's 100 bonus attack damage. So I see what they're trying to do. I don't know if it will work because I do not play Riven and I don't have a lot of familiarity with her. So I'm not sure, but I see what they're trying to do, and in theory, it's a good change. In theory, it's a good change. So we'll see. I think this is intended as a buff, I think. Or maybe just a reworked or itemization. And then they have a bug fix on Broken Wings, her ultimate. Improperly applied splash damage. Okay. All right. Sivir fixed a bug with her Ricochet. Okay. Vi fixed another bug with Assault and Battery. There have been a lot of bugs on Vi since she's come out. Something with her kit seems to cause a lot of bugs. No nerf on Vi as yet. Just waiting on that. I think we're pretty sure that we're going to see them soon. Jungle Vi has been used a ton in competitive play, and it is very popular right now. But so far nothing. Maybe they want a little bit more time, since Vi is still a relatively new champion. Okay, Ziggs fixed a bug with his minefield. Sound effect was triggering when people didn't step on mines. Okay. Anyway, so there's not a whole lot with champions in this patch. Most of the changes are item based, so let's go through and look at these. They've adjusted cooldown reduction on a lot of these, particularly on items that, as you can see here, granted cooldown reduction as a secondary stat. They seems as though they're trying to make it so an item that grants cooldown reduction is either an item that you would think of as, hey, I want to get this for cooldown reduction, and they want to scale down the items where they have CDR, but it's sort of, as it says, a secondary stat. I'll give you an example of this. Glacial Shroud. What's the key thing behind Glacial Shroud? You get it because you want armor. I mean, that's the idea there. And the cooldown reduction kind of comes as a secondary benefit. So look what they're doing with Glacial Shroud. They're reducing the overall cost, they're increasing the armor, and they're reducing the cooldown reduction. So that's what they're doing. They want to emphasize the armor aspect on Glacial Shroud and decrease the cooldown reduction aspect of that particular item. Now, is this good or bad? Well, it depends on what you're building the item for. If you want the cooldown reduction, it's bad. If you're buying it primarily for armor, then that's good. So, it depends on the champion because different champions build these items for different purposes. So, because the cost is cheaper, I'm going to say this is probably a slight buff overall because it's 150 gold cheaper, extra armor, less cooldown reduction. Probably a little bit better, but it's hard to say. It depends on what you're building the item for. And different champions want different things from items. On some champions, the cooldown reduction is really important. On some, it's almost like it's not even that important. Anyway, up here, Athene's Unholy Grail just got straight extra 5% CDR. That's nice. This item was a little bit underpowered. I think that this helps balance it a bit. It actually got buffed, I believe, in the last patch as well, either the last patch or the one before that. So your Lux and Orianna players will be liking this. They'll definitely keep rushing that Unholy Grail because they need the cooldown reduction, and I think it's back to being fairly well balanced with some of the other items, perhaps even a little overpowered, whereas it was definitely pretty weak at the start of Season 3. Spirit Visage, they have left the total cost unchanged. They increased the combined cost, and they've increased the cooldown reduction on this item as well. So this item, they want Spirit Visage to be more focused on CDR. They want the CDR and the magic resist to be the sort of the main focuses of this item. So let's see. This is a buff, obviously, because they've kept the total cost the same, but they've increased the cooldown reduction. So this will be nice on some champions, particularly those that, well, need MR and need cooldown reduction. Now, there's not too many of those, but in certain circumstances, this is a very good item. DFG, Death Paragraphs, they have increased, they reduced the cost by 200 gold from 3,300 to 3,100. and they cut 5% of the CDR off it. So they cut the cooldown reduction from 15 to 10%. Again, I feel like this is largely a buff to Deathfire Grasp. Most people who built Deathfire Grasp, they didn't build it for the CDR. They built it because they were burst casters and they wanted to blow someone up immediately. So 200 gold cheaper, you still are able to blow people up quickly, and the only cost is 5% less CDR. I think that that's a buff overall. I think that if you are a Vagar player or some other burst caster, if you are, I don't know, who's another burst caster these days? Syndra, Annie, if anyone still plays her, all those champions would rather have it be 200 gold cheaper and give up the 5% CDR. So I feel like this is probably a buff for most champions that build Deathfire Grasp. Let's see, Zeke's Herald, they increased the cost by 100 gold, and they added 5% cooldown reduction. Again, this is essentially a buff for this item. This is a support item. Supports want cooldown reduction. 100 extra gold for 5% extra cooldown reduction. That's a good deal. That's a bargain. So this makes it into more of a support item. I mean, you don't have to be a support to buy it, but typically supports buy this item. And this feels like a better value overall. So I would definitely pay 100 extra gold for 5% more CDR. After all, a Kindle Gem is what, like 850 gold, and that's for 10% cooldown reduction. And health, of course, but I feel like 5% CDR is worth more than 100 gold, to say the least. Now, Iceborne Gauntlet, they did some interesting stuff with Iceborne Gauntlet. The biggest issue with Iceborne Gauntlet was they didn't like the fact that people were building it on champions like Ezreal and then just poking with Iceborne Gauntlet. They kind of intended this to be a melee item, not a ranged item. And in fact, most of the people that were buying it were ranged champions. In fact, every Ezreal was building this when Season 3 started. So Iceborne Gauntlet has been nerfed a couple times already. This is partially a nerf and partially just a reworking in some ways. So they made it 150 gold cheaper. They also gave it less cooldown reduction. So they gave it 10% cooldown reduction instead of 15%. And this largely balances itself out. 150 gold for 5% CDR. That feels about right. Someone will probably come in with the actual math and tell me that's wrong, but it feels roughly correct. Something like that. Now, where the real nerf is here, well, he did some bug fixes, but the real nerf here is right here. So for ranged champions, the slow field radius was greatly shrunk, only 210 down from 275. And I like what they did here. They increased the slow field radius for melee champions. They actually made it larger. So this is good for your... They want this item to be used more for melee champs. They really didn't want people poking away as ranged ADs or whatever using the Iceborne Gauntlet. So overall, this is probably a modest nerf, just a little bit, but it's a big nerf for ranged champions. They're trying to get people away from building it on ranged champs. They want it to be built on melee champs. So for them, it's not much of a change, honestly. The decreased cost and the slightly increased slow field is largely balances out by the less cooldown reduction. So for them, it's not much of a change, but you will be seeing fewer ranged champions building this item. Chalice of Harmony, they did a good job of explaining this. They kept the actual item, the cost, and they kept the actual cost and the stat benefits the same, but they changed the recipe so it builds out of 2 fairy charms instead of 1. And they explain why they did that here. They wanted an option to start with 2 fairy charms for mid laners and supports. I don't think it's a good idea to start 2 fairy charms in mid or support. It's better to start with some wards and some health potions in both cases, but you do have that option now. So this is a nice little change. It doesn't really affect much, but it does give you the option to go double fairy charm start if you're feeling lucky. Anyway, Frozen Heart basically is reworked slightly based upon the change that they made to Glacial Shroud. They have kept the total cost the same. The combined cost is 150 gold more because Glacial Shroud is 150 gold less. And they increased the armor, 90 to 95. Okay, so that doesn't really change that much. Again, you will have less cooldown reduction. You'll only have 10% cooldown reduction on Frozen Heart. They're giving it a little bit more armor to compensate. So not that big of a deal, largely the same overall. Negatron Cloak, they made it slightly cheaper and gave it a little bit less magic resist. That doesn't really affect that much overall. I believe that that's roughly the same gold amount for the same stats there. The real reason why this is a change is not so much for Negatron, but here, for Quicksilver Sash, the combined cost was reduced. And in fact, the total gold cost is now 110 gold cheaper for Quicksilver Sash. Quicksilver Sash QSS is typically not built by most players. You see this a lot in high elo play and in competitive play when characters want an extra cleanse on their ADs. Occasionally also on their mids, but typically on their ADs. So for high level players, this is a buff to Quicksilver, but not that big for other ones. For your typical player will not be building this item much, and that won't really affect them that much. Anyway, Avarice Blade, a slight buff. Very few people seem to be building Avarice Blade. We'll see if this gets more people to build it. I don't think so. Perhaps we will see ADs get it a little bit earlier if they're planning on building Static Shiv, but I just don't think this is that popular of an item. Alace's Miracle, they've changed it. This is actually, in my opinion, a nerf on Alace's Miracle. They've changed it from Heal, Clairvoyance, and Revive, getting the cooldown reduction, to Heal, Clairvoyance, and Clarity. Now, Clarity is by far the worst summoner spell in League of Legends. No one who plays competitively uses Clarity. I mean, granted, they buffed it up from 20% to 25%. I mean, whoop-de-doo. Congrats. Now you get your Clarity up 25% faster. The only time I've seen someone actually use Alace's Miracle as an item was, in fact, for the Revive cooldown. Specifically on Revive Teleport Karthus. I saw Phantom Lord do this in one game that I casted before. So, Alace's Miracle is not a popular item. Hardly anyone uses this. I think Riot is trying to buff this, but I think they went about it the wrong way because Clarity is just such a terrible summoner spell. Anyway, Executioner's Calling, straight buff, critical strike chance increased from 15% to 20%. Nobody seems to build this item very often. It is not a popular item, so we will see if this gets people to build it more. Now, Liandry's, I'm not entirely sure how to process this. They say that they want to make this more available for more classes. I feel like this is overall a buff to Liandry's. They decrease the ability power, but they increase the damage per second to 2% from 1.66 effect. So this should make it stronger overall, despite the lower ability power. And the damage over time and the multi-target spells no longer have reduced effect. So this is a pretty big deal, actually. The fact that multi-target now no longer has a reduced effect from Liandry, and they've fixed an issue of it not being properly reapplied to targets who have it. So, I mean, this feels like a bit of a buff here to Liandry's, particularly for champions that wanted this, just because they've increased the damage over time, and multi-target spells don't have reduced effect. So for some champions, this could be really good. In fact, I'm trying to think of who this would be, but for some casters, this could be really good. I know that this is a key item on champions like Rumble. So anything like this is probably good news for Rumble players. I'd have to, again, I haven't built this item much myself, but it does feel like they are making this item stronger. I know that this item was nerfed before because too many people were building it, but we'll have to see. I think that this overall, I think this will be really good on some champs. Now, the lesser ability power might hurt it on others, but for some champs, this feels like it's very, very nice indeed. Ohmwrecker has basically never been built by anyone. It was a poorly designed item. It was initially built out of a catalyst, and they intended it for tanks, but honestly, nobody wanted this. It was a poorly designed item. What they've done is they've changed the build recipe to build out of a Philostone instead of a catalyst. That is a good change. This is clearly intended to be a support item. It's still not where it should be. It still gives 50 ability power. That is not something that supports typically want. So this is still an item that still needs to be redesigned, in my opinion. It should not have 50 ability power. That makes it a poor item for supports, but it's a little bit better at the very least. Still, I don't think you'll see many people building this. It's still in a very awkward position in terms of allowing people to dive turrets. So maybe we will see someone use this in competitive play against a turtling team comp, against an Evil Geniuses, former CLG EU turtling team comp, but I just don't think this item's going to see much use, and the biggest issue is this, the Blasting Wand. They need to get rid of the Blasting Wand and the plus 50 ability power. 28. The other thing is the cost. It's too expensive. It's almost 3,000 gold. That's way too expensive when you could simply buy a Runic Bulwark, which is about 3,000, 3,100, and would give much, much more to the team. I mean, much, much more. So this item is still problematic, moving in the right direction, but still not there yet. Okay, Death Cap. Death Cap, honestly, I mean, people are still building it. People will always build the item that gives the most AP. However, it was kind of nerfed a lot in Season 3. It was a bit of a weak option compared to a lot of the other items. So it is getting a much-deserved buff here. They've increased the cost by 100 gold, 3,300 from 3,200, but major increase here. Ability power bonus increased to 30% from 25%. That's a big change. 5% more overall bonus to a total ability power. Late in the game, it's not unusual for casters to have, 300, 400 ability power. If you had 400 ability power, this would increase the gain by, let's see, 5% increase on 400 ability power. Okay, hold on, I'll check it right here. I do have my calculator. That's, let's see, 5%. That would be another 20 ability power, so that would be like getting another amplifying tome. So late game, this is worth, an extra 300 to 400 gold in stats for only 100 extra cost. So this is a definite buff to Death Cap. And nicely done there to make this more of an attractive item. Too many casters have been skipping Death Cap and just loading up on Zanya's, Abyssal, Leandries, DFG, Deathfire Grasp, and so on. So this is a nice change to make Death Cap more attractive. Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, interesting little thing here. This is the AP jungle item that builds out of Spirit Stone. Now reduces the cooldown of Smite by 20%. I'm not sure what to say about this. It's an interesting idea. I have to see it in practice. I've heard some people say that this actually makes this a really good item, Spirit of the Spectral Wraith. I need to see more people use it at the high elo ranks and in competitive play, but it's interesting. I'll grant it that. And Spirit of the Spectral Wraith has been a very unpopular item ever since it came out. Hardly anyone has been building this. So it's been buffed a couple times. We will see if this gets people to buy it. The biggest problem is most of the junglers right now just are not AP junglers, so it's not that useful. Most of the junglers right now are either sticking with Wriggle's Lantern, or right now the Spirit of the Elder Lizard, the one that grants AD, is actually quite popular with a lot of junglers, people like Hecarim. So right now there's not a lot of AP junglers, so you're not seeing this item used much. Okay, Shirelias, this is a very minor buff to Shirelias. Cooldown reduction no longer unique. I suppose you could build more than one of them if you wanted. Shirelias has been not used as much in Season 2 because of Season 3 because of all the extra support items. Was much more common in Season 2. So this is pretty minor, but I guess it's a nice little bonus. You can get, I guess you can buy two. You could buy two of them and get extra cooldown reduction, I guess. Something like that. I don't think we'll see people doing that, but hey, I guess it's nice. Okay, Blade of the Ruined King, slight buffs here, extra attack damage and current health damage increased from 4% to 5%. I'm assuming that that's when you use the active on the Blade of the Ruined King. Nice little buff. I don't think that this item really used it. This isn't a commonly used item, but it does have its niche. It's a very popular item on Jax. It's good on Duelists, particularly in top lane. I'm not sure that this is necessary, but for those champions who use it, I guess it's nice. I still don't think this really needed to be buffed, though. I think it was in a fine place. One item that did need to be buffed was Wit's End. Wit's End was over-nerfed. It was very, very popular in much of Season 2, but it was over-nerfed, so they're reverting some of that. They have increased the magic resist from 20 to 25, and then you can get another extra 20 if you have the auto-attack stack. So it can be up to 45 MR now. That feels better. Will we see it more commonly? I don't know, but that does feel like a good change, and it definitely feels like something that was needed. That's most of the changes. We'll run through these last couple ones quickly. They fixed some display bugs with the league system, updated the rules around displaying the loading screen borders. Okay. Normal and co-op now shows the higher. Okay, so normal and co-op games now will show your highest banner, whether that was solo queue or team play. That's kind of nice. Now poor Varus Nox can finally get his gold border to show up in normal games instead of that silver border, because he was terrorized by reaching a high of like 1495 in solo queue last season. So that's nice that they will have the borders show your highest rating, highest reward tier instead of just your solo queue tier. Same thing for custom and dominion queues, and then rank games still show the reward from that specific queue. I think that's a more intelligent way to handle it. Good job there. Let's see, they're adjusting matchmaking. Again, in the last patch, they changed it so it would take into account total number of wins in the current queue. I talked about that last time. They made some adjustments to reduce queue times. No idea what that means. They did something under the hood. I guess that they were hoping to make the queues shorter. Obviously, they did something with total number of wins that made the queues take too long. They made some adjustments to the item shop. You can do a search menu, change items. Let's see, you can view the scoreboard while the item shop is open. Wow, I don't even know how you can do that. I'll have to play around with this. You can also chat while it's open. You can search for things, more responsive. Okay, not much there. They're still trying to fix that item shop. I still think it's a little clunky. I'm still not a huge fan of the Season 3 item shop. I'm getting more used to it. I still think it's not perfect. Shenbot, something, let's see, continue to function after the target of his ult is killed. Okay, so apparently there was a bug where Shenbot, if you killed whoever he was ulting, he would flip out or just go, not be able to function if you killed the target. No idea what's going on there. I haven't seen too much of Shenbot. Oh well. All right, quality of life improvements. Ashe, Caitlyn, Kennen, Sona passives all no longer consumed when attacking wards, and Twisted Fate and Ziggs too. So all of them, you don't use up their passive when you hit a ward. Believe me, that's frustrating if you're Ashe and you've spent the first 90 seconds of the game charging up your what I can't think of the name of the skill, but charging up her critical strike passive, and then you auto attack a ward and you use your 100% crit chance on hitting that ward. So that kind of thing was irritating. Okay, so I guess this is nice, but pretty minor. This is a nice change. The teleport indicators would be more distinct from the recall indicators. I noticed that it was difficult to tell a recall and a teleport apart, so hopefully they're changing that to make it more obvious. Let's see, chat commands. They've added some new chat commands. You can see all the chat commands. You can type help to get more information. You can ignore a player. I heard about this, that the knockups now function more consistently. They've actually added a slightly different animation for knockups, so that's nice, fixing bugs there. You can set an option so that you, let's see, you no longer cause spacebar to stop working. Okay, I never use spacebar while playing. I think that has something to do with locked camera, but I typically don't use that. I guess this is nice. Oh, this is really nice. Muting a player will no longer mute map pings. That sounds bad, but check this out. Map pings have been throttled to prevent spam. Let's face it, nothing's more irritating than that guy who pings 20,000 times on Baron or on a tower or something. So this is a nice change. I'm assuming that if you try to ping too many times in a short period, they will start disabling your pings. So that is very nice. Believe me, I've been irritated by that in the past. Fix an item that prevented some players from receiving in-game messages with special characters. That probably involves things from other languages. Zooming in and out have been smoothed. Okay, nice graphical effect. Boots of Nobility now has a cooldown for the passive. That's nice, a little tooltip. I have been using Boots of Mobilities on some junglers, and I was curious about that. That's a nice little change there. You can see your auto attack range. This is probably not too crucial on most champs, but maybe if you're playing Tristana and you want to know just how far you can auto attack, that's pretty cool. Let's see, camera won't pan when it's not the program focus. I've seen this happen too, right when the game loads, the camera immediately starts panning across the map. Bug fix, Kog'Maw, Karthus, and Zyra shouldn't give double kills when using Miramana. Okay, I haven't seen that happen. That's nice. An issue with Nami's bubble, her Aqua Prison properly resetting jungle creeps, looks like another bug. And hitting space while using locked camera shouldn't disable locked camera mode. Okay, so I guess the people were accidentally disabling locked camera mode by accident by hitting spacebar. On the whole, not a huge patch, mostly some nice quality of life changes, a lot of nice little fixes here and there. I still say the biggest change in this patch is to Nasus, making him much stronger. But most champions, relatively not many changes and a whole lot of reworking of items. Most of it looks pretty good. I don't see anything immediately jumping out as being a huge problem, as I sometimes do. Not too sure about Akali. Devoted Akali players might have different opinions. You'd have to talk to one of them. Overall, though, feels pretty solid. Overall, pretty minor. Nothing too earth-shaking coming through in this patch. Much more modest tweaking compared to some of the other patches. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you're enjoying this feature. Once again, we'll see you guys later. See you guys next week. Until then, have a great weekend. Take care. See you later.